Part 1. It was one of those evenings that felt like it came straight out of a movie. The sky was painted in soft oranges and pinks, the kind you only see when the world slows down just enough to let you breathe. She had spent the whole day thinking about nothing important, just little things like what to cook for dinner and whether her favorite coffee shop would still have almond croissants left by the time she got there. But then he called. His voice was calm but excited. "Wear something nice," he said. "I've got a surprise." She laughed. "Again? Last time your surprise was burnt pizza and a Netflix marathon. It's different." He promised, and it was. He took her to that little rooftop place downtown, the one with fairy lights strung between old brick walls and tiny tables just big enough for two. They'd been there before on their third date, when they were still nervous around each other and kept spilling water because their hands kept brushing by accident. Now they knew each other's rhythms. He knew how she stirred her tea 3 times clockwise before taking a sip. She knew he always tucked his phone face down during meals because he hated distractions. They fit. Dinner was quiet but warm. Not the kind of silence that feels empty, but the kind that feels full, like everything that needed to be said had already been understood without words. Then, right after dessert, a slice of chocolate cake she didn't even order, but somehow appeared on her plate. He stood up. Her heart dropped into her stomach. He didn't go down on one knee right away. Instead, he walked around the table, took her hand, and looked at her like she was the only person in the city. "I've loved you since the moment you laughed at my terrible joke about elevators," he said, voice low and steady. "And I don't want to spend another single day pretending I'm not completely yours." Then he knelt. The ring wasn't flashy. Just a simple band with a small stone that caught the light in a way that made it look like it held a secret. She couldn't speak. Her eyes filled up fast, and she nodded before he even finished asking. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, kissed her knuckles, and smiled like he'd just won the lottery. And maybe he had. They stayed there for hours after that, talking about names for future kids, arguing playfully over whether their dog should be a golden retriever or a corgi, planning a tiny backyard wedding because neither of them liked crowds. She went to bed that night floating. Every part of her felt light, like joy had replaced her bones. She fell asleep with her hand under her pillow so she could feel the ring every time she turned over. But joy doesn't always last. Till morning. Her phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. Not a call. Not a text. A notification from her bank. She almost ignored it. Probably just a receipt from the grocery store or a reminder about her car payment. But something made her open it. The message was short and cold. Greater than. Your account balance is now $83.42. A transfer of $41,916.58 was completed today at 11:48. P.M. She stared at the screen, blinked. Read. It again. It had to be a mistake. Banks made errors all the time. Maybe someone typed in the wrong number. Maybe it was a system glitch. She logged into her banking app with trembling fingers. The transaction was real, sent to an account she didn't recognize. Labeled only as final transfer. Her breath came in short gasps. That money app wasn't just savings. It was everything. Her emergency fund. The deposit for the apartment they were supposed to move into next month. The money she'd set aside to help her sister with medical bills, all gone. In the dark, she called him. It rang 5 times before he answered. His voice was groggy, like he'd just woken up. "Hey," he said softly. "Can't sleep?" She tried to keep her voice steady. "Did you take money from my account?" A pause. "Too long. What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. Over $41,000. Gone. Right after you proposed." Another silence. Then a sigh, deep and heavy, like he'd been holding it in for weeks. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said. Find out what? Her voice cracked. "I took it. All of it." The room spun. She gripped the edge of the bed to keep from falling. "Why?" she whispered. "I had no choice." "No choice," she laughed, but it sounded broken. "You asked me to marry you tonight? You put a ring on my finger, and then you emptied my bank account?" It wasn't like that, he said quickly. It wasn't personal. I swear. Then what was it? She shot back. Business. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. I'm not who you think I am. Her chest tightened. What does that mean? I can't marry you tomorrow, he said. I never could. The words hit like ice water. You lied, she said. It wasn't a question. I wanted to tell you, he said. Every day. But you were so happy. And I kept thinking I'd fix it before it mattered. Fix what she demanded. What did you do? I owe people, he admitted. Dangerous people. They gave me a deadline. Tonight was it. If I didn't pay, they were going to come after my family. So you stole from me instead. I didn't see another way. She sat there in the dark. Phone pressed to her ear, feeling like the ground had vanished beneath her. The man she loved, the man she'd said yes to just hours ago, had used her. Not just her money, her trust, her future, her hope. And the proposal, she asked, voice hollow. Was that real? He was quiet for a long time. I meant it, he finally said. More than anything. But love doesn't pay debts. She didn't cry. Not yet. The pain was too sharp for tears. It just sat inside her, cold and heavy. What happens now? She asked. I don't know, he said. I'm leaving town tonight. I can't stay. Don't, she said suddenly. Don't run. I have to. And take the ring off my finger first. He didn't answer. I'll leave it at your door, he said softly. I'm sorry. The call ended. She sat in the silence, staring at the ring on her finger. It no longer felt like a promise. It felt like a trap. Outside, the city slept. Cars passed quietly on wet streets. Somewhere a dog barked. Life went on like nothing had changed. But everything had. She opened her laptop, checked her bank statement again, scrolled through their texts from earlier that night full of hearts and plans and dreams that now felt like fiction. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She wrote down everything she remembered, every detail, every lie, every moment that now seemed suspicious in hindsight, because if he thought she'd just disappear into the background while he vanished with her life savings, he was wrong. This wasn't over, not even close. And tomorrow. Tomorrow wouldn't be their wedding day. It would be the first day of something else entirely. Part 2. Morning came too soon. Gray light seeped through the curtains like it was trying not to wake her, but she hadn't slept anyway. Not really. Just stared at the ceiling, replaying every word, every look, every touch from the past 3 years, wondering which ones were real and which were part of the act. She got up slowly. The ring was still on her finger. She didn't take it off. Not yet. It felt like proof. Proof that this had happened. That it wasn't a nightmare. First thing she did was call the bank. She explained what happened, the unauthorized transfer, the timing. The fact that someone she trusted had access to her phone, her passwords, her life. The woman on the other end sounded sympathetic but firm. Unless you reported fraud before the transfer, she said, and unless we can prove your account was compromised without your consent, there's very little we can do. But he used my phone, she said. He knew my passcode. He watched me type it 100 times. That's considered shared access, the banker replied gently. Legally, it's complicated. Complicated. That word made her want to scream. Nothing about this felt complicated. It felt like theft. Like betrayal. Like someone had walked into her home while she was sleeping and taken everything she owned, including her future. Next, she went to the police station. The officer who took her statement was kind enough. He wrote everything down, asked for screenshots, copies of messages, bank records. But when she asked if they'd track him down, he shook his head. Ma'am, this sounds like a civil matter. Unless there's evidence of identity theft or coercion, it's hard to treat it as a criminal case. Especially if you two lived together or shared devices. She left the station feeling smaller than when she'd entered. Like the world had already decided she was foolish for trusting someone. And now she had to live with the consequences. Back home, she sat on the floor of her empty living room. Boxes were half packed for the move they'd planned. A stack of wedding invitations sat unmailed on the kitchen counter. She picked one up. Her fingers traced the embossed letters. It felt like holding a ghost. Then her phone buzzed. Not a call. Not a text from him. She'd blocked his number hours ago. It was an email from an address she didn't recognize. No name. Just a string of random letters and numbers. The subject line read, "You deserve to know the truth." Her heart pounded as she opened it. Greater than, he's not marrying you. Greater than he's marrying someone else. Greater than tomorrow. 3 p.m. St. Mary's Church. Come if you want to see who he really is. No signature. No explanation. Just those lines. She stared at the screen. Was this a trap? A cruel joke? Or was someone trying to help? She thought about deleting it. Walking away? Starting over somewhere far from here. But then she remembered the way he looked at her last. Night, like he was saying goodbye even before he spoke. Like he already knew how this would end if he was really getting married to someone else. Then everything he said about debts and danger might have been another lie. And if that was true, she needed to see it with her own eyes. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next day, she wore black. Not because she was in mourning, though maybe she was, but because it felt like armor. She didn't put on makeup, didn't style her hair. She just walked out the door with her keys, her phone, and a deep, quiet anger that had replaced the shock. St. Mary's Church was on the edge of town, tucked between old oak trees and a quiet park. She arrived early, sat on a bench across the street, watched people arrive, mostly older couples, a few friends in nice dresses, a florist carrying white lilies. Her stomach twisted. What if he saw her? What if he pretended not to know her? What if he laughed? But then she saw him. He stepped out of a car in a crisp white suit, tailored, expensive looking. He ran a hand through his hair, checked his watch, and smiled at someone inside the car. That smile. She knew it. It was the same one he gave her when they talked about traveling to Portugal or adopting a rescue. Dog, warm, familiar, real. Except now it was aimed at someone else. The car door opened. A woman stepped out. She was tall, elegant, wearing a simple ivory dress, not a wedding gown, but something close. She took his arm, and they walked toward the church entrance like they'd done it 1,000 times before. And then the woman turned. She looked nothing like the person she'd imagined. No flashy jewelry, no dramatic makeup. Just calm eyes and a quiet presence. But something about her face. It was familiar. Then it hit her. She'd seen that face before. Not in person. In photos. On his phone, months ago, when he'd shown her pictures of his family, his mom, his younger brother, his older sister who lived overseas. This woman. She was the sister she remembered now. The same sharp cheekbones. The same way of tilting her head when listening. Her breath caught. If this was his sister, then why were they walking into a church together like a couple? Unless the email wasn't about a wedding at all, unless it was a cover. Her mind raced. Maybe the debt was real. Maybe the threat was real. And maybe this wedding was just a way to get cash gifts, envelopes, donations from friends and family under false pretenses. Or maybe, just maybe, they were trying to protect someone. She stood up slowly, crossed the street, didn't go inside, just stood near the side entrance where the flowers were being arranged. A woman in a floral apron glanced at her. "Are you with the bridal party?" She hesitated. "No, I'm a friend." The florist nodded. "They're running late." "The groom's nervous. Keeps checking his phone?" "He's not the groom," she said quietly. The florist frowned. "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Instead, she slipped around the back of the church, found a small window slightly open, and listened. Inside, voices were low but urgent. "We can't keep doing this," a woman said, the sister. "She's going to find out." "She already knows," he replied. "I told her last night. She's not coming after you, I don't know." "I hope not. You stole from her," the sister said, voice tight. "That's not who we are. Didn't have a choice," he shot back. "You think I wanted to do this? Do you think I slept last night?" There was a long pause. Then the sister sighed. We'll pay her back. Every cent, but you have to disappear. At least until they stop looking. I'll never stop looking, he said bitterly. Not after what I saw. What did you see? He lowered his voice so much she could barely hear. Enough to get us all killed. She stepped back from the window, heart hammering. This wasn't just about money. This was about something darker, something dangerous. And suddenly, she wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a witness. She walked away from the church fast, hands shaking. She didn't look back. Didn't cry. Just kept walking until her legs ached. When she got home, she locked the door, pulled the blinds, then she opened her laptop again. This time, she didn't just look at bank statements. She started digging. She searched his name. His sister's name. The company he claimed to work for. The address he gave her for his office, most of it checked out in the surface. But the deeper she went, the more cracks appeared. His job? The company had shut down 6 months ago. His apartment? Registered under a fake name. Even his driver's license photo. Didn't quite match the man she knew. And then she found it. A news article from 2 weeks ago. Small local paper. Buried on page 7. Greater than local man questioned in connection with missing funds from tech startup. Authorities seek public assistance. The photo was blurry. But it was him. The article said he'd been working as a financial consultant for a small firm. That over $200,000 had vanished from client accounts. That he'd disappeared shortly after. But here's the thing, they never charged him. Never arrested him. Because the money trail led to offshore accounts, untraceable. And the only witness. Vanished too now, it made sense. He hadn't just stolen from her. He'd been running. And she'd been his next stop. But why tell her the truth last night? Why not just vanish without a word? Unless he was trying to warn her, unless he knew they'd come after her, because she was the last person who saw him. She sat back. Staring at the screen, the sun was setting again. Another day gone. But this time, she didn't feel helpless. She felt awake, because now she understood this wasn't just about getting her money back. It was about staying safe. And if he really cared, then a little, he wouldn't have left her in the dark. Which meant he might reach out again, and when he did, she'd be ready. Not with tears, with questions, and maybe, just maybe, with a plan of her own. Part 3. The next morning, she woke before sunrise. Not because she wanted to, but because her mind wouldn't stop turning. Every thought circled back to the church. The sister, the article, the missing money. It all fit together like pieces of a puzzle she never asked. To solve, she made coffee. Strong, black. Sat at the kitchen table with a notebook open in front of her. No fancy planner. Just blank pages and a pen that skipped every few words. At the top of the first page, she wrote, "What do I know for sure?" Then she listed it out. He took her money. He lied about his job. He's connected to a bigger theft. His sister is involved. Or at least knows something. He didn't just run. He warned her. That last point stuck in her chest. If he only cared about saving himself, he would have vanished without a word. But he told her. Looked her in the eye. Said he was sorry. Maybe that meant something. Or maybe it was just guilt. She didn't know. And that uncertainty gnawed at her. By noon, she'd made a decision. She wasn't going to wait for him to contact her. She wasn't going to hide. And she definitely wasn't going to let this act in with her broke and broken while he disappeared into someone else's life. She needed answers. Face to face. So she went back to the church. Not during a service. Not during a wedding. Just mid-afternoon, and the place was quiet and empty, except for a janitor mopping the back hallway. She walked in like she belonged there. "Hi," she said to the man with the mop. "I was here yesterday. For the event." He nodded slowly. "The private gathering." "Right," she said. "I left my scarf behind. Near the side pew." Shrugged. "Go ahead and look." She didn't need a scarf. She needed to see if they were still around. She walked down the aisle slowly, eyes scanning every corner. Candles half burnt. Flower petals on the floor. A single white chair turned sideways near the altar. Then she saw it. A small envelope tucked under the hymn book on the front bench. Her name was written on it. In his handwriting, her hand shook as she opened it. Inside was a key and a note. If you're reading this, he came back. Greater than good, go to 47 Oak Ridge Lane. Apartment 3 Bites, don't tell anyone. Don't bring your phone. Come alone. Greater than I'll be waiting until sunset. Greater than after that. I'm gone for good. No signature. No explanation. Just those lines. She stared at the key. Cold metal. Worn edges. Real part of her screamed, "Don't go." This could be a trap. A way to make her disappear too. But another part, the part that remembered how he held her hand when she was sick. How he stayed up all night helping her fix her laptop. How his voice softened when he said her name, whispered, "Go," because if there was even a sliver of truth left between them. She needed to find it. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. She left her phone at home. Took the bus instead of driving. Wore plain clothes, a gray hoodie, jeans, sneakers. Nothing that would stand out. Oak Ridge Lane was in a quiet part of town. Old brick buildings with fire escapes and flickering streetlights. Apartment 3B was on the 3rd floor, above a closed bookstore. The hallway smelled like dust and old wood. She climbed the stairs slowly, key in her pocket. When she reached the door, she hesitated. Then she knocked. No answer. She waited. Counted to 30. Knocked again. Still nothing. Her heart sank. Maybe he'd already left. Maybe this was just another lie. But then she heard movement inside. The lock clicked. The door opened just a few inches. It was him. He looked different, tired, unshaven, eyes shadowed like he hadn't slept in days. He didn't smile, didn't reach for her. Just stepped back and said, "Come in." The apartment was small, barely furnished, a mattress on the floor, a single lamp, a backpack by the door. Half-packed. "You came," he said. "I had questions," she replied. He nodded. "I figured." She crossed her arms. "Start with the truth. All of it. No more stories." He sat on the edge of the mattress. She stayed standing. "Okay," he said. "The company I worked for, it wasn't just a startup. It was a front. For laundering money? I didn't know at first. Thought it was legit. But then I saw things. Transfers. Fake invoices. Shell accounts. And you stole from them?" "No," he said quickly. "I tried to report it to the authorities. But before I could, they found out. They threatened my family. Said if I talked, they'd make it look like I was the one who did it. So you ran." "I had to. But they tracked me. Found out I was with you. That's why I took your money. Not for me. To pay them off. To buy time." "But you didn't pay them," she said. "You sent it to an offshore account." "'Cause that's where they told me to send it," he said. "They gave me instructions. Said if I followed them exactly, they'd leave my family alone." "And the wedding at the church, that was a cover?" he admitted. "My sister flew in to help me disappear. We staged it so people would think I got married and moved away. Less suspicion." She studied his face, looking for cracks, for lies. "Why tell me any of this?" she asked. "Why not just vanish?" He looked down. "Because I care about you. More than I should. And I couldn't let you think I used you just for money. I didn't want you to hate me forever." "I don't hate you," she said quietly. "I just don't know you," he nodded. "Fair." She walked to the window, looked out at the street below. "What happens now I leave tonight?" he said. "There's a bus leaving at midnight, going north. I won't come back. And your family, they're safe. For now. My sister's taking them somewhere hidden." She turned back to him. "What about my money?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. "I can't give you all of it back. Not yet. But this is everything I have left. $5,000. It's not enough. But it's a start." She didn't take it right away. "Do you think they'll come after me?" she asked. He hesitated. "I told them you knew nothing. That you were just someone I dated. But if they check your accounts, they might think you helped me hide the rest. So I'm in danger too, maybe, he said. But I left a trail pointing away from you. If they follow it, they'll think I took everything and ran alone. She finally took the envelope. Felt the weight of it. Not just cash but risk. Hope. Regret. Will I ever see you again? She asked. He shook his head. It's better if you don't. She stood there for a long moment. Then she walked to the door. Before she left, she turned. If you really cared, you would have told me sooner. I know, he said softly, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that. She stepped into the hallway. Closed the door behind her. The sun was low in the sky. Golden light spilled across the street. She didn't cry, didn't look back. But for the first time since this began, she didn't feel like a victim. She felt like someone who had seen the truth and survived it. And that was enough for now. Part 4, 3 days passed. No calls, no messages, no sign of him. She told herself that was for the best. That silence meant he'd left like he said he would, that the danger had moved on with him. But silence can be louder than noise. She kept checking. Her bank app, not because she expected money to reappear, but because it reminded her this was real, not a dream, not a bad movie. Her life had actually been turned upside down by someone she trusted more than anyone. She used the $5,000 wisely, paid her rent, bought groceries. Put a little aside for emergencies, though. What counted as an emergency now felt different. One afternoon, while sorting through old receipts, she found something strange. A small slip of paper tucked inside her wallet. She didn't remember putting it there. It was a note in neat handwriting, not his feminine. Careful. Greater than. If you want to know what really happened, meet me at the park bench near the fountain. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., come alone. I won't hurt you. I just want to help, no name. But she knew it had to be the sister. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Walk away. Let whatever storm was coming pass. Without her in it. But then she remembered how the sister looked. At the church, calm but worried, protective, like she was trying to hold everything together. While her brother fell apart, maybe she knew more. Maybe she could give her back something even more valuable than money. Peace. Of mind, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next day, she arrived early. Sat on a bench across from the fountain, pretending to read a book she wasn't really reading. At exactly 4, the sister appeared. She wore a simple coat and carried a paper cup of tea. She didn't look around nervously, just walked straight to the bench and sat down beside her. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said quietly. I wasn't sure I should, came the reply. They sat in silence for a moment, watching water ripple in the fountain. Then the sister spoke again. He told me you're smart, that you wouldn't believe half of what he said unless you saw proof. Is there proof? Yes. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. Everything he saw, the fake invoices, the offshore transfers, the names of the people behind it, it's all here. He copied it before he ran. He wanted to give it to the authorities, but he knew they'd never believe him without backup. And you kept it. I didn't know what else to do, she admitted. I thought about going to the police myself, but they already think he's guilty. If I show up with this, they'll say I'm helping him hide evidence. So why give it to me because you're not connected to any of it, the sister said. Not officially. And because you deserve to know the truth. Not just the version he told you to protect you, but the full story. You're sure? She handed over the drive. What am I supposed to do with this, whatever you think is right, the sister said. You could delete it. You could send it to a journalist. You could walk into the police station and say you found it. Or you could keep it safe until it's safe to use. She looked at the tiny piece of metal in her palm. It felt heavier than it should. Why are you doing this? She asked. You don't even know me. I know what it's like to love someone who makes terrible choices, the sister replied. And I know what it's like to watch them try to fix things the wrong way. He didn't steal from you because he's cruel. He did it because he thought it was the only way to keep everyone safe. including you. But it wasn't, she said softly. No, the sister agreed. It wasn't. They sat quietly for a while longer. The sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched across the grass. Is he okay? She finally asked. He's alive, the sister said. That's all I can promise right now. That was enough. Before she left, the sister turned to her one last time. If you ever need anything, if you feel like you're being watched or followed, call this number. She handed over a small card with just a phone number on it. It's untraceable, and someone will answer. Then she stood up, took her empty cup, and walked away without looking back. Asterisk, that night. She plugged the USB drive into her laptop. Files filled the screen, spreadsheets, scanned documents, audio recordings labeled with dates. She clicked on one. A man's voice, cold, calm, said, Asterisk, if he talks, make sure he disappears. And anyone close to him. Asterisk, her blood ran cold. This wasn't just about money. This was about power, control, fear. And he had risked everything to get this evidence. She spent hours going through it all, cross-checking names with news reports, finding connections between shell companies and real businesses, even spotting a familiar logo one she'd seen on a delivery van outside his old office. By morning, she had a clearer picture. He hadn't just stumbled onto something shady. He'd uncovered a network, one that reached further than she ever imagined. And now, whether she liked it or not, she held part of the key to exposing it. But telling the truth came with risks if she went public. They might come after her if she stayed quiet. Nothing would change. She thought about walking away, starting over in another city, changing her name, pretending none of this ever happened. But then she remembered the way he looked at her that last night in the apartment, like he was saying goodbye to the best thing that ever happened to him. He'd made mistakes, big ones, but he hadn't run just to save himself. He'd run to protect others, and maybe, just maybe, that counted for something, so she made a choice, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of fairness. She opened a new email account, anonymous, secure, attached 3 key files, just enough to prove something was wrong, but not enough to reveal her hand completely. Sent it to a well-known investigative reporter whose work she'd followed for years. Subject line: You might want to look into this. Then she deleted the sent folder, wiped the USB clean, buried it deep in a drawer. She didn't expect a reply, didn't expect justice overnight, but for the first time since that night on the rooftop, she felt like she was doing something that mattered, not just for herself, for him too. And as the sun rose over the city, she poured herself a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and waited not for him, but for the truth to find its way home. Part 5. 6 weeks passed. Life settled into a new rhythm. Not the one she'd planned, the one with shared mornings, weekend markets, and inside jokes that only 2 people understand, but a quieter kind. A solo kind. She got used to eating dinner alone. 2 sleeping on one side of the bed. 2 answering only to herself. She didn't hear from him. Not once. The sister never called. The number on the card stayed untouched in her drawer. But something else happened. A news story broke. Small at first. Just a paragraph in the business section of a major paper. Then it grew. Headlines, interviews, police statements. The tech startup he'd worked for was under federal investigation. So were 3 other companies linked to the same financial group. Names were named, bank accounts frozen, executives questioned, no mention of him by name. But she knew. Her email had sparked it. The reporter had dug deeper, found more witnesses, verified the documents, and slowly, carefully, the truth began to surface. One evening, while scrolling through a news site, she saw a photo, blurry, taken from a distance. A man walking out of a government building with a lawyer beside him, face half-turned, but she recognized the set of his shoulders. The way he held his head, he wasn't running anymore. He was cooperating that night, as she sat on her balcony wrapped in a blanket, watching city lights blink on one by one. She didn't feel joy, didn't feel anger, just a strange kind of calm, like after a long storm finally passes and the air smells clean again. A few days later, a plain envelope appeared in her mailbox. No return address. No stamp smudges. Just her name written neatly on the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Greater than the money is being returned. Greater than all of it. Greater than it will take time legal process. But it's happening. I'm safe. For now, I won't contact you again unless you reach out first. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll believe I never meant to hurt you. Thank you for not staying silent. No signature. She read it 3 times. Then folded it carefully and put it in the same drawer as the USB drive and the untraceable number. She didn't reply, not because she still hated him, but because some things don't need words. Asterisk, 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 months later. On a cool spring afternoon, she walked past a small coffee shop she'd never noticed before. It was tucked between a bookstore and a bike repair shop. Wooden sign above the door, Haven Brew. Something made her stop. Through the window, she saw him. He stood behind the counter, wearing a simple apron, steaming milk for a customer. His hair was shorter, his posture less tense. He laughed at something the customer said. Drill laughter, not forced. He looked ordinary, peaceful even. She didn't go in, didn't wave, just stood there for a moment. Watching the life he'd built from scratch, the kind of life that doesn't hide behind lies or borrowed identities. Then she turned and kept walking, but this time, there was no ache in her chest, only quiet understanding. He'd paid his price. In fear, in exile, in lost years, and she'd paid hers, in trust broken, dreams rewritten, nights spent wondering what was real. Neither of them got the future they planned, but both of them got something else. A second chance. Not together, but on their own terms. Asterisk, asterisk, back home. She opened her laptop, checked her bank account. A notification blinked at the top of the screen. Greater than deposit received. $41,916.58. Her breath caught. It wasn't just numbers on a screen anymore. It was closure. She didn't spend it right away. Didn't book a trip or buy something fancy. Instead, she opened a new savings account, named it Fresh Start. Then she went to the kitchen, made tea, and sat by the window as rain began to fall softly outside. She thought about everything's the rooftop proposal, the empty bank account, the church, the USB drive, the news headlines. The coffee shop talked, all of it had led her here. Not to a wedding, not to a fairy tale, but to a life. It was entirely her own. Stronger, wiser, whole, and that she realized was worth more than any ring. Asterisk, 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 years later. Someone would ask her if she ever regretted saying yes that night on the rooftop. She'd smile, not sadly, but gently, and say, asterisk, I don't regret loving him. I regret believing love was enough to fix what was already broken. Asterisk, because sometimes the person who hurts you the most teaches you the most important lesson. Trust yourself first. Protect your peace, and never let anyone, no matter how charming, how familiar, how promising, convince you that your safety is less important than their secret. She never saw him again after that day at the coffee shop. But sometimes, on quiet mornings, she'd pass a cafe and catch the smell of fresh coffee and burnt sugar. And for just a second, she'd remember, not with pain, with gratitude, because losing everything taught her how to rebuild, and that was a gift no thief could ever take away.